Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Truth or Demons podcast. I'm your host, Stevie, and today I have another debunk for you, and a really good one if I do say so myself. It's another doll, and it's another doll with a haunted story generated by the New England Society for Psychic Research, aka NESPR. And, as it appears, this story was generated by Dan Rivera, NESPR's senior lead investigator. All right, where to begin? So, back in October of 2023, Tony Spear and Dan Rivera did an interview on a show called Great Day, Connecticut. I will link the video below and in the show notes. The host asked them to talk about their Phantasmacon that was being held at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut at the end of October 2023. The host asks about the artifacts they plan to bring, and Tony proceeds to discuss a few of the items that will be there, including Annabelle. And as he lists a few of these items, Dan interjects and says, "The fire doll." Let me just play that clip for you.
But either way, you have some artifacts like the Annabelle doll coming.
Yes, well, we're going to be having our Seekers of the Supernatural Phantasmacon on October 28th at the Mohegan Sun Casino. We're going to have the real Annabelle doll. Also, the movie Annabelle doll will be there. And we got what's called the Shadow doll, which is a cursed object also.
Fire doll as well.
Fire doll, which was, you can tell them, Dan, what that happened with that doll quick.
Well, that doll caused a fire in the home, which it was like 3 girls, a son, the mother and father were all, perished in the house. And awful. That doll, when that doll came out of that house, there was not even a scorch on the doll. It wasn't even burnt or anything like that. So that happened out west, and the family that took control of the doll after that moved northeast, and that's how the Warrens...
How they attained it.
Yeah.
But the doll was the only thing that wasn't really ruined.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have the satanic worship idol.
According to Dan Rivera of the New England Society for Psychic Research, or NESPR, there is a doll within the Warrens Occult Museum that was given to Ed back in the day. He says that the doll's original owners were out west when this fire happened. After that incident, the fire doll somehow made its way to a couple. This is never clarified in any interview that I've seen. Then this doll makes its way up to Connecticut, and that's how it came to be in the possession of the Warrens. But just a year earlier, at a Warrens Paracon in 2022, there is a video of the fire doll on display on a TikTok. And in that TikTok video, there is a sign under the doll that says, quote, "Fire doll. After acquiring the doll, a young couple's house burned to the ground. Fearing it was the doll, the couple requested Ed Warren take possession of it. Now the doll resides in the Warren Occult Museum for safekeeping." End quote. Okay, so in 2022, it was just the couple with the doll they believe started fires. Why they believe that is never explained. Not that I can find anyway. The only info I can find is the doll allegedly survived these fires with no burns or damage of any kind. Then, in 2023, the story evolves. And now we have background on the doll before the couple owned it. Okay, now even I could admit that over time, stories can grow as new information is discovered. But we're dealing with NESPR here, remember? When have they provided proof or legitimate evidence for any of their stories? But even though I can admit a story can evolve over time due to research and due diligence, I can't admit that the next version of this story is anything but flat-out theft of a story, a real-life story. So, I am covering this story because a dear friend and avid listener of my show came across something that enraged her, and she felt it necessary to bring to my attention so I could share it with all of you. Big thank you and shout out to her. Back at the beginning of December, NESPR put out one of their podcast episodes. And as I've mentioned before, I don't really keep up with their podcast. It kind of hurts my brain to listen to any of the members of NESPR on this show. The amount of times they bring up demons and blame things on demons makes my head feel like it's going to explode. And all my demons are going to escape and I'll never get them back. Oh, wait. Anyways, so my friend and listener encourages me to watch this specific episode because NESPR has gone too far this time. In Seekers of the Supernatural podcast, under their live videos on YouTube, episode 15 of season 1, Paranormal Theory is there investigating with Rob Sakowitz and fellow member Danny from Get Haunted. Sure, Rob has distanced himself from NESPR. Right. So, Paranormal Theory and Danny are reacting to one of the devices they're using going off and saying the name Elizabeth. So Dan Rivera, who is communicating with them via video chat, encourages the group to go over to the fire doll and read the story they have framed underneath the fire doll. Dan proceeds to tell them that he thinks one of the victims in the fire was named Elizabeth. Now, if this were true and the spirit box or whatever said the name Elizabeth, that would be pretty awesome, right? So let me just tell you why it's just not this time. So the guy from Paranormal Theory, Ryan, I think, bends down with his flashlight and proceeds to read the story about the fire doll. Not only is the story he's reading identical to an article published in the Daily News in 2019, but there is absolutely no child named Elizabeth in that article. Also, they didn't even try to hide the origins of the article. They have the author listed at the top. Oh, and don't worry, I'll get to the author. But like I said, there is no child in the story named Elizabeth. There is, however, a place called Elizabeth. I've posted the photos here of this section of the article on the YouTube video and on the social medias, as well as linked the article below. So I decided to play this little segment from the video here for you, so you can see and hear exactly what happened and what is said, and I will react as we go. So here's the clip and the truth inserted via my commentary.
Fire doll, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, is in Annabelle's original case.
Right.
Okay, already starting off to something funny here. He just said that the fire doll is in Annabelle's original case, and that's because Dan decided to build Annabelle a new case, and I don't really know why. I think maybe he thought the first one wasn't good enough or his was better. I'm not really sure.
I'm hurting.
Scars.
Oh,
What scars? Are you talking about physical
I
scars?
lived right here.
Is this still Elizabeth?
You might be communicating with the fire doll. Just want to let you know.
okay.
Am I talking to the fire doll?
That was me. That
Children
was me.
around you.
Oh, interesting. Dan, does the fire
I
doll?
don't mind speaking.
Ooh,
Kill.
wow. We've never had that.
Can you tell us your story? Please?
Dan, does the fire doll have a name other than the fire doll?
No, we don't have a name for it, but she did. Elizabeth, right? Oh, yeah, Way's saying Elizabeth is one of the siblings that were killed. She was 6 years old and she was killed in the fire.
Okay.
What's her name?
I just got Elizabeth, and it just said
Children around you.
Children are around.
Right, they all died in the fire.
Yeah, and mine just said kill.
Do you carry the children around you? Do you keep them with you?
No.
Why are your hands bound?
Okay, so that part, Danny just asked the fire doll why her hands are bound. Don't worry, I'll cover that later.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see they're bound. Why? Your chance to tell your story.
Does that do that? Is that like normal with that bell?
Not this intelligent.
Why does it look like there's scars on your face? Says that scars.
Yep. It's
It looks like there's scars on your face.
Hey,
Mhm.
Danny. Hey, Danny.
Yeah.
Below the fire doll, there's a frame picture, and that tells you the story of the fire doll.
Stay here. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Wow.
Ashes in here? Wait, ashes fired off.
Well, they were killed in the fire. They would have been ashes. Yeah. Yes.
Someone said
Yeah.
yes.
If you guys want to read that a little bit, I think that's gonna help you.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'll give you a flashlight if you want to keep running spiritual.
I'm not letting go of this thing he gave me. All right. The fire doll forbidden romance led West Virginia girl to burn her family to death in 1969. Nothing could have prepared emergency responders in Parkersburg, West Virginia for the inferno they rolled up on 50 years ago this week. Charles and Ruby Bailey and 10 of their 13 children were entombed by a flash fire that consumed the interior of the tar paper rental house. The fire materialized at 1 a.m. on Sunday, June 8th, 1969, but rescuers were driven back by the heat. even as a female inside made her final plea for help. Most of the bodies were near windows and doors, but they couldn't make it out the house. A local fire lieutenant, William George, told the press the juvenile victims included girls ages 17, 11, 9, 7, and 5, and boys ages 6, 4, 3, 21 months, and 6 months.
Oh. Wait, and one of the children lit this fire?
Rats.
Yes. I believe the story was only one survived, like the one who set it on fire, right?
Dan, you're muted if you're talking.
Here's a picture of them all.
I think you're talking to each other.
Yes.
Yeah, we're probably telling him what we experienced.
My whole left side is
They're saying that Dan and Wade are talking to each other, and to me, it kind of looks like they're arguing.
very warm. Yeah, it is true. It feels very
Did you end up touching me when I was reading that book?
Absolutely not.
I got touched.
Ryan, do you see the name Elizabeth on that article?
I'm looking. I see a Susie. There's a Helen, John.
I think it was somewhere in the beginning.
I don't think they gave the names of the victims. Yes. Elizabeth, right here.
Yep.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Okay, so he just found the name Elizabeth in the article. But notice how he doesn't read that section? And that's because this section of the article that mentions the name Elizabeth is talking about a place, not a person. I'll get to that in a minute.
Elizabeth is the one that started the fire.
Oh my gosh.
And Dan, I was I don't know if you heard me ask Rob, but when I was reading this, I thought Rob was like real close behind me so he could see.
Yeah,
I know it's going crazy. I felt you. And
I'm going to let this play till the end of the little clip just so you can see that he does not go back to the article to address the connotation of the name Elizabeth in it.
and something like I thought Rob was like leaning on my tricep.
True again.
Wish I was.
And he wasn't touching me.
Like I said, you don't know where this is all coming from, but from what we've researched and the help that we had doing the research, I was able to tell that it was the fire doll that was communicating with you at this time.
Wow.
We get a close up for
Which
everybody.
makes sense because we were getting the word scars that came across that has scars. Ashes.
And we're reading that and it said kill. Like this, she set that house on fire and killed all of them.
Which is how the hell are you okay with doing something like that? Like,
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like from the words we were getting, I've never gotten kill on this phone.
but it makes sense because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the name of
death.
In the name of death, it just said.
And that's the family right there.
Here, right here.
Put this on that ledge right in front of our case.
All right, that's the end of that clip. I have asked around, and no one that knew the Warrens back in the day has ever heard of this fire doll. So if Ed and Lorraine never told a story of a family dying in a fire caused by this doll, where on earth did this story come from? I'll tell you. It came from NESPR, or Dan Rivera, via a real-life tragedy he found that could coincide with the narrative he was pushing for this oh-so-haunted doll. Here's the actual story of what happened to this family and the complete lack of association to anything haunted, especially a doll. Here's the article on the Daily News, titled, "Forbidden Romance Led West Virginia Girl to Burn Her Family to Death in 1969." And it's by an author called David J., and I am really struggling with his last name, forgive me. I think it's Krajicek, maybe? I could be completely wrong, and I'm so sorry. Here's the article. Nothing could have prepared emergency responders in Parkersburg, West Virginia, for the inferno they rolled up on 50 years ago this week. Dante himself could not have conjured a more heartrending scene. Charles and Ruby Bailey and 10 of their 13 children were entombed by a flash fire that consumed the interior of their tar-papered rental house. The fire materialized at 1 a.m. on Sunday, June 8, 1969. Customers at Jimbo's, a nearby drive-in, reported the flames and rushed to help. But rescuers were driven back by the heat, even as a female inside made her final pleas for help. Most of the bodies were near windows and doors, but they couldn't make it out of the house, a local fire lieutenant, William George, told the press. The juvenile victims included girls ages 17, 11, 9, 7, and 5, and boys ages 6, 4, 3, 21 months, and 6 months. Sorry about that, guys. I should have given a trigger warning for this. It gets worse. Years later, a cop who was among the first to arrive told the Parkersburg News and Sentinel, quote, "The baby was fried," he added ruefully, quote, "Everybody else was fried." Rescuers found Charles Bailey's father, Obie, known as Grandpop, sitting outside in shock. The only survivor. He said he had scrambled out a bathroom window. 2 other children, Susie, 15, and Roger, 13, who slept in a small outbuilding, were missing but turned up later that night at relatives' house. The Baileys had moved to Parkersburg, a gritty little industrial city on the Ohio River, from a town 25 miles away, just weeks earlier after Charles, 40, was hired as a maintenance supervisor at the local county courthouse. The position was a godsend for a couple that had struggled to provide for their 13 children they produced over 19 years of marriage. Their oldest, Juliet, 20, was married and living in Illinois. It would turn out that the fire that flipped their dream job into a nightmare was no accident. Officers smelled gasoline around the house. And E.L. Roosh, assistant fire state marshal, promptly diagnosed arson. He said the burn pattern suggested that someone had splashed gas throughout the house. Suspicion initially fell on Grandpa Bailey, but that changed in a kitchen table conversation 12 hours after the fire between teenage Roger Bailey and relative named Helen Enoch. "If you won't tell anyone," young Bailey said, "I'll tell you something about that fire." He explained that his sister Susie had enlisted him to help incinerate their kin after their father had forbidden Susie from dating her boyfriend, John Bumgarner, 19, because he was her first cousin. Soon, both Susie and Roger had signed confessions for Fire Marshal Roosh. "I told Roger that I was going to set the house on fire after they all went to bed," Susie Bailey wrote. She and the brother siphoned gas from the father's truck into a dishpan. They quietly sloshed it around as their family slept. "I put gasoline into every room but the bathroom," Susie admitted. She touched off the inferno by tossing a flaming paper bag through a window. She and Roger then fled to rendezvous with Bumgarner. Susie confirmed that her motive was a parental conflict. "If I did not stop seeing my boyfriend," she said, her father warned, "he would have a warrant sworn out for his arrest." The teen siblings were charged as adults with 12 counts of murder, and their confessions seemed to ensure the conviction. But then it all went up in smoke. Susie Bailey's court-appointed attorney, Bob Black, filed a routine pre-trial challenge of her confession, arguing that Roosh had illegally coaxed the admissions from the hungry, sleep-deprived teen who was said to have the mental capacity of a 10-year-old. A circuit court judge stunned criminal justice officials by agreeing with Black, and the state Supreme Court upheld the invalidation of the confession. It was the opinion of the court that she did not knowingly and intelligently waive her constitutional rights to remain silent and to have advice of counsel. The county's young prosecutor, R. Bruce White, decided that he had no case without the confessions, and the presumed killers were set free. In a 2009 retrospective on the murders by Parkersburg newspaper, White blamed, quote, "some quick decisions, especially by the Fire Marshal Roosh, who was out of his element in taking the confession. Once they poisoned the testimony of the kids, anything they acquired, which included the evidence and all kinds of goodies, was inadmissible," defense attorney Black told News and Sentinel. "They got off, and we felt horrible about it," ex-prosecutor White added. The Bailey teens were sent to foster homes, Roger in North Carolina, Susie in Ohio. The brother settled in, but the sister, renamed Laura Jean Boone, did not. She was boy crazy, a chronic truant, and a frequent runaway, including one trip for a meetup with Bumgarner. In 1972, after a stint in an Ohio psychiatric hospital, she dropped out of sight for good after sending her brother a note saying that she had married and was moving to the Northeast. Back in West Virginia, the remains of her parents and 10 siblings have been molded for half a century in 6 shared coffins in a communal gravesite at Bethel Cemetery in Elizabeth. A Marvel marker notes that they died in a tragic fire. Actually, the fire was murder. The slapdash investigation was the tragedy. And that's the end of David's article. So there is a very important fact that is mentioned in this story. This fact alone completely debunks the doll having anything to do with this tragic fire or any fire or incident since, specifically from the date of this story in 1969 to 1998. Why so specifically those dates, you ask? Well, let me just explain. This story of this family tragically dying in a house fire took place in the year 1969, right? That is stated in multiple articles, so I feel comfortable saying that this is a fact. Another very fun fact is, this particular doll in question, displayed by NESPR as the fire doll, is actually a doll created by a woman named Susan Krey. She is very celebrated in the doll community for her work, and the creation of these dolls didn't take place until 1998. This doll 100% did not exist in the year 1969, so there is absolutely no way this doll could have been responsible for or even present for this house fire, recorded to have taken place in 1969. Thanks to the help of my research team, we have the exact doll's information that Dan Rivera claims to be the infamous fire doll given to the Warrens before it even existed. Also, it is important to note that good friends of the Warrens, Frank and Terry Chiafari, who spent lots of time with the Warrens and in the museum, never heard of the fire doll and adamantly believe it was never in the museum during the Warrens' lifetime. Yet Dan claims it was given to Ed. I know who I would trust and believe in this situation. And for those of you watching on YouTube, here is the doll in question. For the podcast listeners, photos will be linked in the show notes and posted on the social medias. This doll is identical to the so-called fire doll. Here's a side-by-side for you. This doll is known as the Collectible Concepts 25-inch African-American porcelain doll Honey Bunch by Susan Krey. Now, when I say I am 100% sure when I say this doll was absolutely not the cause of a 1969 fire, it's because there is undeniable, irrefutable proof of this. When these dolls were created, the creator, Susan Krey, signed and numbered them on their necks. I guarantee you, if you look for this signature and number on the fire doll's neck, you would absolutely find it. Or you would find a blemish where it used to be. And remember during the clip of NESPR's podcast episode where Danny from Get Haunted says something about the doll's hands being bound? I pointed it out briefly, but I wanted to address it more thoroughly before I wrap up this debunk, so nice and neat with a bow. So, in the clip, Danny says to the fire doll, "Why are your hands bound?" I had a hard time not laughing at this. Do you ever notice how some of these so-called investigators will cling to anything that could possibly make the situation more sinister? This felt like one of those moments. But I'm here to tell you, there is nothing at all sinister about this doll's hands being quote-unquote bound. They are not actually bound. They are wrapped in protective bubble wrap. Turns out this is standard in the storing, packing, and shipping of these dolls. They are porcelain, and if you know anything about collectible porcelain dolls, you'll know that their faces and hands and feet are usually all porcelain, and then the body is often soft and stuffed. So, the hands being taped with bubble wrap is standard to protect the porcelain. A listener I was discussing this story with noted that a lot of dolls sell on websites like eBay, and they are collector's items, so to have a doll with its original bubble wrap protecting the hands could make it go for more money. So, there you have it. This doll, a Susan Krey porcelain doll created in 1998, specifically as the Honey Bunch doll, can absolutely not be a haunted item given to the Warrens after causing or even being present for a fire in West Virginia in 1969. But wait, there's more to this debunk. I saved my favorite part for last. While writing this episode, I actually found the author of the article Dan uses for the fire doll story. And I actually got a hold of him. And for those of you on YouTube, I have blurred out his photo simply because he is already frustrated with how many times his stories have been stolen and misused. Here is what he said, quote, "Thanks for the info. I'm not interested in engaging with whomever it is that created this farce. I've been writing about crime for nearly 50 years, and my work gets, quote, borrowed by all manners of weirdos like this. It would be a waste of my energy to try and track them all down," end quote. So there you have it. From the author of the article, the fire doll is a farce, and he did not give permission for his work to be used for it. Thank you so much for joining me for another debunk. This one was a lot of fun. I love when all the evidence comes together so nicely. Maybe Dan should stop coming up with these stories. He clearly needs to hire a research team at the very least. So, when you come across the fire doll at the next Devils on the Run tour, or whatever they're planning to call it now, just know she's about as haunted as the Scooby-Doo episode. Thank you for watching and listening. Until next time.